This happened a few weeks ago. I had just turned 32, and I moved to this small town to take photos. I thought exploring abandoned places could help me find inspiration. I wasn't very experienced, but I figured I could manage. Honestly, I still think about what I saw there that I drove out to this old farm on the edge of a foggy field. The air felt thick and cold. The barn doors creaked in the wind, and rusty tools were scattered around the yard. It was eerily quiet, maybe too quiet. I thought the isolation would help me focus after a messy breakup. The first night, I set up my gear inside the barn. As it got dark, I started feeling uneasy. Just as I was ready to pack up, I heard a bell tolling in the distance. At first, I thought it came from a church, but it kept ringing, and I couldn't understand how it sounded so loud. Maybe I wasn't used to the quiet. I decided to ignore it. Looking back now, I should have listened to that instinct. The next evening, the bell rang again. It was louder this time. I stepped outside, scanning the thick fog. Shadows flickered, but when I looked closer, nothing moved. I felt uneasy, like something was watching me. My heart raced. I wondered if it was just the stress of my breakup messing with my head. On the third night, I took a walk around the yard. I noticed some old toys, broken dolls, rusty tricycles scattered near the barn. It struck me as strange. I was sure I hadn't seen those before. Where could they have come from? A chill ran down my spine. Then the bell rang again. Each toll felt like it was pounding in my chest. I wanted to leave, but a part of me felt drawn to the sound. Then I noticed something in the fog. A small figure. I squinted, trying to see better. It moved, darting behind the barn. My heart raced with fear. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer. Just the bell. It felt like it was mocking me. I took a step back, feeling lightheaded. Was it just my mind? I wanted to shake off the fear, but every second stretched longer than the last. Something was definitely off. Then I heard laughter, soft and distant. I whipped around, but the yard was empty. The bell tolled once more. I felt my stomach drop. It was too much. I decided I needed to leave. I grabbed my gear and hurried to my car. As I looked back at the barn, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine that I don't think I ever went back to that farm again. The sound of the bell still echoes in my mind. I can't decide if it was real or if it was all in my head. Maybe I'll never know. The days that followed felt like a haze. I tried to settle into my new routine, but the memory of that farm haunted me. Every night, I would hear the bell in my dreams, reverberating louder than any church bell I'd ever known. I knew I had to do something to shake it off. I thought if I went back during the day, maybe I could confront whatever fear had taken root in me. So, I drove back to the farm. The sun was high and bright, the fog absent. Yet, the sight of the barn sent a chill down my spine. It was just as I had left it, decayed and lonely. I parked my car and stepped out, the familiar creak of the barn door echoing in my ears as I pushed it open. Inside, it was a different place in daylight. Dust danced in the sunbeams streaming through the gaps, and everything felt less sinister. But I was still on edge. That I wandered through the empty space, snapping pictures to document the light filtering through old wooden beams. Each click of my camera was a small comfort, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I glanced around, half expecting another little figure to dart away, just like before. Nothing moved. Across the barn, I spotted something unusual, a small door hidden behind stacks of old hay. It had a rusty padlock, but it was ajar. I moved closer, my heart thumping in my chest. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. I hesitated. What if I found something terrible? Yet a pull inside me urged me on. As I descended, the air grew colder. I fumbled for my phone, using its light to guide me. The narrow passage opened into a small room that smelled damp and stale. There were old crates, and as I approached, I noticed something odd on one of them. A small bell, identical to the one I had heard ringing in the fog. I picked it up, running my fingers over its intricate carvings, that is when I noticed something else. A scrapbook lay open on one of the crates. I flipped through the pages, my mind racing. The photographs were of children playing near the barn, laughing, smiling. I felt the weight of their joy. But then, as I turned to the last few pages, my heart sank. They showed the same children, but their expressions had changed to confusion, fear, and finally, disappearance. That I dropped the scrapbook, panic gripping me. Who were these kids? Why were they here? What had happened to them? I turned to leave, but as I did, that same laughter echoed around me, louder than before. It wasn't just in my head. It was real. Suddenly, the bell rang again, deafeningly close. I raced up the stairs, stumbling in my haste. As I burst through the door and back into the barn, I felt a pressure against my back, as if something were pushing me towards the exit. Then, just as abruptly, everything went quiet. I spun around, breathing heavily, looking for the source of the laughter, the bell, anything. But the barn stood empty, silent, save for the distant sound of the wind. It felt like I had uncovered something buried, but I couldn't grasp what it was. I needed to get out of there, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I bolted for the exit, the bell starting to toll again as if signaling my retreat. That day, I left the farm forever changed. But I couldn't ignore the urgency tugging at me to find answers. Something was waiting for me. The next day, I couldn't shake the unease. My mind was stuck on the scrapbook and the children. I had to learn more. So, I decided to visit the local library, hoping they had something on the farm's history. It was a small place, filled with books and the smell of old paper. After a few minutes of searching, I found a dusty section dedicated to local lore. I started skimming through books and articles. Most of them were mundane, detailing crops and weather patterns. But then, one faded newspaper article caught my attention. It was a piece from decades ago, detailing the tragic disappearance of several children from the area. My heart raced as I read it. The article mentioned a nearby farm where the children liked to play. The details were vague, but the language stirred a memory, something about a bell ringing when the children were last seen. I gripped the edge of the table, my breath quickening. Could it be the same bell? How were all these pieces connected? Excited but anxious, I asked the librarian if she had any further information. She looked at me oddly but led me to a section with local archives. There, I came across an old ledger. It listed names and dates. My eyes darted down the pages until they stopped on a familiar name, one of the children from the scrapbook. I felt a chill creep over me. This wasn't just any story. This was real. These were real children. Their fates felt intertwined with the barn. But what could I do? I didn't have concrete answers, only murky questions that shifted with every thought. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed a flyer taped to the wall. It was an announcement for a community meeting. They were discussing the farm and its history. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe others would have information too. But as I read the details, dread settled in. The meeting was scheduled for that very night. That I bit my lip, caught between curiosity and caution. I wanted to attend, but what if someone there noticed my questions? What if it brought unwanted attention? The thought of the laughter echoed back in my mind. I couldn't ignore those children's faces. I needed to know that as the sun dipped low, painting everything in hues of orange and purple, I made a decision. I would go to the meeting. I parked my car outside the old community hall. The looming shadows of the trees felt unwelcoming. Inside, the chatter filled the room, but it felt like there was a lingering tension that clouded everything. That I scanned the crowd for familiar faces. My heartbeat quickened as I spotted someone from the article, an elderly man with a cautious expression. He looked like he carried secrets. I stepped closer, ready to approach him. But before I could, the lights flickered. Everyone turned their heads, and then, through the silence, I heard it again, the bell. A single chime, echoing through the hall, that's when I knew. Something was about to happen, and I was caught right in the middle of it. The room fell silent, the bell's toll hanging in the air. An uneasy tension enveloped everyone, as if the sound had drawn a line between the normal and the unknown. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Who else had heard that bell? The meeting resumed, but the energy had shifted. Faces were etched with concern, whispers turned to furtive glances. The elderly man I had noticed before seemed to stiffen. He was gripping the back of his chair, knuckles white. I took a deep breath and decided to approach him. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely rising above the murmurs. He looked up, surprised. "I couldn't help but notice you seem familiar with the history of the farm." His expression darkened. "It's a story best left alone," he replied, his voice low that I pressed on. "But I found some articles about children. The bell it was mentioned. I need to know what happened." He glanced around as if expecting someone to overhear us. "You don't want to dig into that," he warned. "Some things are buried for a reason." Before I could respond, an organizer stepped to the front of the room and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. We gather tonight to discuss recent events concerning the old Waverley farm." I flinched at the name. I turned back to the man, my heart racing. "What do you know about it?" I asked urgently. He hesitated, his eyes darting towards the front of the room where people were beginning to listen intently. "Let's just say the bell was a warning," he muttered, turning slightly as if I had conjured danger. Painful memories flashed behind his eyes, and I hesitated. Did he mean the bell warned of danger for children? The thought sent chills through me. Just then, the lights flickered again, and the room sank into partial darkness. A few gasps echoed, and my pulse quickened. The bell tolled again, this time, 3 ominous chimes. Something was off. I didn't just feel it, I knew it. "Stay close to me," the old man whispered, grabbing my arm. The crowd murmured, growing restless. I tried to reassess my surroundings, searching for anyone reacting to the bizarre sounds. Suddenly, a voice broke through the anxious chatter. "We can share our tales. We must confront what is beneath the surface." It was a woman, her arms raised high, face flushed with fervor. The moment caught in my mind. I had to learn the truth, but now with the added chaos, I felt the room closing in. I pulled away from the man, focusing on the woman as she continued, "Together, we can unearth the past." But that was the moment it hit me. Everyone's expressions were shifting from fear to something else. What were they hiding? Then, everything went dark. The abrupt silence felt heavy. I had lost sight of the man beside me. I felt panic set in. I reached for my phone to illuminate the room, hoping others would do the same, but my hands trembled too much. Breathlessly, I whispered into the darkness, "What is happening?" Then, I heard it again, the bell. This time, right behind me. I spun around, the hair on my arm standing on end. My heart pounded as I strained to make out any shape in the darkness. The bell's echo seemed to vibrate through the walls, mixing with the murmurs of fear that surged through the crowd. "Can anyone hear me?" I called out, my voice shaky. There was no response, just the distant sound of that bell, looming and insistent. My pulse raced as I took small, careful steps backward, praying I wouldn't bump into anyone. Then, I heard a rustle nearby. I turned abruptly, squinting into the blackness. I was met with a set of pale eyes reflecting the dim light of my screen. I gasped, nearly dropping my phone. "Who are you?" I asked, struggling to contain my fear. "It's just me," the voice replied, a familiar voice. It was the elderly man from before, though I could barely see his face. "I thought I lost you. We need to leave." "Leave? But why?" My fear turned to confusion. "What is happening? What do you know about the bell?" He grabbed my arm firmly. "The bell is more than just a sound. It's a signal. And we can't ignore it. His voice trembled, and I grasped how scared he really was. Before I could ask another question, the lights flickered back on, bathing the room in a harsh glow. People looked disoriented, some were clutching each other, while others simply stared blankly at the walls. The woman from earlier was gone. Had she ever been there? "We need to go," the man urged again, propelling me towards the exit. As we made our way through the dispersing crowd, I caught snippets of conversation. "Something's wrong with Waverly," someone whispered. My heart sank further into my chest. When we finally reached the door, I paused. "What do you mean by a signal?" I pressed him again, needing to know what dark truth lay behind those eyes. "There are stories here," he replied grimly, "of what happened on that farm." The bell marks the moments when he hesitated, looking over his shoulder as if the shadows had ears. "When danger resurfaces. We mustn't linger any longer." A chill ran down my spine. The realization hit me hard. Waiting here could invite the very darkness we were trying to flee. "What do you know about the children?" His eyes widened. "Less than I should, but more than I want to. It's not just a tale, it's a warning meant for those who know too much." Suddenly, the bell rang out once more, loud and resonant. Everyone in the room froze. I felt the ground shift beneath me, as if the entire building was briefly unsteady. The bell was calling, and I couldn't ignore it. "What do we do?" I whispered, panic threatening to engulf me. The old man seemed to make a decision. "We confront it. We have to go back to the farm. It's the only way." My breath caught in my throat. The bell tolled again. I had followed this journey to uncover the past, but now it felt like I was being pulled into something darker than I could ever imagine. I looked into the man's urgent eyes and realized there was no turning back. As we stepped out into the night, a shiver ran down my spine. The cold air hit me like a wave, and I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. The old man didn't let go of my arm, urging me forward as we crossed the gravel driveway. The gravel crunched beneath our feet, each step amplifying the tension swirling inside me. "What do we do when we get there?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound brave. I hadn't been prepared for this. The stories, the warning, the bell, it was all too much. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we need to understand what it wants. The bell has a purpose, and so do we. We didn't come this far to turn back now." I wanted to argue, but deep down, I knew he was right. Turning back meant facing whatever that bell signified, whatever it was trying to awaken, and that was scarier than anything I could imagine. The drive to the farm felt different. Shadows danced in my peripheral vision, and every rustle of leaves seemed amplified. I glanced at the old man, hoping to catch a hint of relief on his face. Instead, he looked lost in thought, as if wrestling with memories I couldn't fathom. When we arrived, a low mist hovered just above the ground, curling around the trees, giving the place an otherworldly appearance. The farmhouse loomed ahead, its facade dark and foreboding under the pale moonlight. "Stay close," he instructed, tightening his grip as we approached. I hesitated. But what if something happens? What if we find out things we shouldn't? His gaze softened as he turned to me. "But what if we don't? What if we let fear win?" His words struck me. The bell's toll had stirred something deep within me, a sense of urgency linked to those lost children he had mentioned. I nodded, ready, but barely that we stepped onto the porch, the wood creaking ominously. The door hung ajar, as if inviting us in or warning us to stay out. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and neglect. Shadows clung to every corner, and my heart raced as I scanned the interior. The furniture was covered in white sheets, an eerie shroud over the remnants of the past. "What are we looking for?" I whispered, overwhelmed by the stillness. "Anything connected to the stories," he replied. "Anything that might explain why the bell resonates with danger." Just then, I noticed a faint glowing light seeping from a room at the end of the hall. My breath caught in my throat. "Did you see that?" The old man nodded, his expression warning me to be cautious. We crept toward the source, each step echoing in the silence. As we neared the doorway, the light flickered and dimmed, a shiver of fear running through me. Just then, I heard a sound, a soft whisper, too faint to understand, but undeniably close. I turned to the old man, my eyes wide with panic. "Did you hear that?" I hissed that. He nodded slowly, and we exchanged a look filled with understanding. Whatever awaited us in that room could change everything. The bell was calling us, and now I finally felt as if I was right where I needed to be, or where I was meant to be trapped. Before we could move closer, the light surged back to life, scorching bright. And at that moment, I knew whatever was inside wasn't going to wait for us to gather our courage. "Ready?" he whispered, although I could tell he wasn't sure either. "No," I admitted. But the truth was, it was time to confront the unknown, and I was about to find out what darkness lingered behind that door. The moment I reached for the doorknob, a chill snagged my breath. My hand trembled, and I hesitated. The light within the room pulsed like a heartbeat, almost alive. I turned to the old man, but his expression was fixated on the light, a mix of fear and something else, something deeper. "Should we knock?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shook his head. "No time for that." With a deep breath, I twisted the knob and pushed the door. It creaked open, revealing a small room filled with old furniture, its surfaces covered in dust. The glow emanated not from the walls but from a small bell sitting on a rickety table in the center. It was identical to the one in the stories. Then my stomach dropped. "That's it," I breathed. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing like thunder. I jumped, and the old man's eyes widened in alarm. "We're trapped!" I shouted, panic starting to bubble in my chest. "Stay calm," he snapped, searching the walls as if expecting a way out to materialize. But I couldn't help it. I was drawn to the bell. It sat there, emitting a soft, haunting light that flickered like a beacon. "What if it rings?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It can't," he said, but there was doubt in his tone. He stepped toward the table, but just as he reached it, the bell began to vibrate. The sound filled the room, a haunting chime that echoed in my bones. "Stop!" I yelled. "Don't touch it." But he was already leaning in, eyes locked on the bell like he was in a trance. "I need to see it up close," he murmured. "No, wait." But it was too late. He pressed his fingers against its surface. In an instant, the light intensified. The room warped as shadows twisted around us, dark shapes leaping from the corners. The very air felt thick, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I gasped, stepping back as dark figures emerged from the mist surrounding us, their faces obscured, but the sense of dread was palpable. "Who are they?" I whispered, my heart racing. "They're the lost ones," he replied, his face pale. "Those who followed the bell." The whispers intensified, unintelligible yet insistent. I felt the weight of their sorrow, their longing to be freed from everlasting darkness. One of the figures stepped forward, its features growing clearer. It looked like a child, eyes wide and sad, reaching out toward me. "What do they want?" My mind spun as I fought against the urge to run. The old man continued to reach for the bell. "I think they want us to know," he said, his voice shaking with both conviction and fear. Suddenly, the room filled with the sound of bells clanging loudly, resonating through the walls. I clutched my ears, overwhelmed. With my heart racing and panic building, I shouted, "Stop it! We have to get out of here!" But the bell's sound only grew louder, drowning out my voice. And then everything went dark. That I gasped, lost in total blackness, surrounded by the echo of the bell. I couldn't tell where I was or what had happened. The only thing that pierced the darkness was the faint whisper of those lost children, pleading for something I couldn't grasp. All I could think was, how had we gotten here? And what would it take to escape? I blinked, hoping to adjust to the darkness, but nothing changed. My heart hammered in my chest, a violent reminder that I was alive. I felt around, trying to find something solid, anything to anchor me in this void. The air was thick, heavy with a damp chill. Then, slowly, a flicker of light appeared, shimmering like a distant star. I hunched forward, desperate to move toward it. Each step felt unsteady, as if the ground could drop away at any moment. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice trembling as I wondered where the old man had gone. I felt the panic start to swell again. Then, without warning, the light expanded, revealing the room once more, distorted and warped. The bell was still there, shining ominously on the table, but everything else had changed. The furniture was now a chaotic tangle, twisted and grotesque. Shadows danced unnaturally along the walls, growing and shrinking like they were alive. "Where are you?" I whispered, feeling more alone than ever. Suddenly, a low voice emerged from the darkness, a child's voice. "Help us." I froze. I spun around but saw only shadows. The light of the bell flickered ominously, as if responding to the voice. "Who?" I asked, fear making my voice catch. "What do you want?" But the only response was a chorus of whispers, overlapping and frantic. "Find us," they begged. "Release us." I stepped back cautiously, every instinct screaming at me to leave this place. Behind me, I heard a rustling sound. My heart dropped. "Old man." I called out, dread pooling in my stomach. "Where are you?" There was no answer, only silence. An unsettling feeling crept over me. I turned back toward the bell, its glow pulsating softly now, almost inviting. "What are you trying to tell me?" I murmured, inching closer. As I neared the table, the shadows shifted again, gathering into a single, distinct shape. I squinted, trying to make it out. Slowly, the outline of the child emerged, the same child I had seen before, eyes wide and filled with desperation. "Please," they said, reaching out a small hand, "you have to ring the bell." My gut twisted. "No. I can't." I shouted, taking a step back. The reality of the situation crashed over me. I was being asked to do the very thing that might trap me forever. "Please, it's the only way." The child's voice cracked, like fragile glass. With every word, I felt a tug at my heart. "Help us escape." Questions raced through my mind. What would happen if I did? Who were these lost children? And what of the old man? Before I could decide, the air around us thickened, and I felt a sudden rush of cold. The shadows grew denser, swirling with an urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. "You must choose." The whispers chanted, growing louder. That's when I noticed something in the corner of the room, a small key glimmering in the darkness, half buried in dust. My breath caught. What did it unlock? I was torn between instinct and curiosity. I needed to know what lay ahead, but it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. "What do I do?" I cried, feeling desperation rise. The child only pointed toward the bell, their expression pleading. "Please." I hesitated, the chaos swirling around me. Part of me longed to ring the bell, while the other part trembled with fear of what might happen next. I knew I had to act fast before the room swallowed me whole. I felt stuck in a nightmare. Conflicting emotions swirled within me, and I glanced between the bell and the child. Their eyes were full of hope, but the shadows pulsated with a danger that sent chills through my veins. The whispers grew in volume, a dissonant choir insisting I act. "Ring it," they urged. "It's the only way." But what would I unleash by doing so? I felt the weight of the decision crush me like a stone. The shadows around the room thickened, as if drawing closer to hear my choice. I stepped back from the bell, my heart racing. That's when I noticed the key again, reflecting the soft glow from the bell. "Wait," I said, suddenly feeling the urge to investigate. I turned and moved toward the key. As I reached for it, the shadows shrieked in protest. No! They cried. Choose us. Ignoring the whispers, I picked up the key. It was cold and heavy in my palm, unlike anything I had touched before. I studied it, perplexed. What did it go to? I scanned the room, looking for a lock or a door, anything that might reveal more about this twisted reality. Still clutching the key tightly, I approached the bell once more. What are you hiding? I whispered, more to myself than the air around me. The child watched, their expression shifting from desperation to something resembling fear. Don't, they murmured, backing away slightly. You don't know what you'll find. Frustrated, I turned my gaze back to the bell. Every fiber of my being screamed to ring it, but was it really the solution? What if this is just another trap? I thought aloud, anxiety clawing at my throat. The shadows whispered again, but this time the tone shifted. The urgency was gone, replaced with an eerie calm. Unlock us, they beckoned softly. Find the door. My mind raced. What door? I scanned the distorted room, but nothing seemed out of place besides towering shadows. I felt overwhelmed and disoriented. That's when I remembered the old man. I whispered into the darkness, "What happened to you? Are you here?" A chill ran through me, accompanied by a faint echo of his voice. Trust the bell. Trust the bell. I repeated incredulously, glancing back at the child. What does that mean? But the child remained silent, their gaze fixed on the key in my hand. A hint of confusion flickered in their eyes, then panic. You can't let them out like this. They shrieked. The shadows stirred violently, swirling around me. The room trembled. You have to decide. They screamed, their voices overlapping until I clutched my head. In that moment, dread washed over me like icy water, and I understood I was out of time. Something was coming, something more sinister than the whispers. I had to commit, but to what? Stay back. I shouted, feeling the darkness close in. The bell glimmered, the key growing warm in my palm. My pulse quickened. I had to act, but how? Then everything went dark, and a low growl rumbled in the distance. Choose now. The shadows lunged forward, ready to claim me. In a split second, instinct took over. Holding the key tightly, I turned and thrust it into the bell's opening, heart racing. I didn't know why I felt compelled to do so, only that I was desperate to break free from this nightmare. The bell shuddered violently, vibrating against the key, which felt cold against my palm. Suddenly, an ear-splitting chime reverberated through the air, drowning everything out. The shadows hissed, swirling around us, and I braced myself, terrified of what I had unleashed. As the light from the bell pulsated with a blinding intensity, the child's figure flickered and distorted. In a frantic moment, my fear morphed into resolve. If you're lost, I'll help you. I shouted over the chaos, but my voice felt small against the cacophony. Before I could blink, the darkness erupted around me, and suddenly I wasn't alone. The old man reappeared by my side, his figure resolute though visibly shaken. What did you do? He shouted, but it was almost swallowed by the clamor of the bell. This isn't how it works. I fought to stay grounded. I don't know. I felt like I had to do something. The shadows screamed, a furious thrumming crescendo that shook the very foundation of the room. You don't understand. He called back, but I barely heard him over the unfolding chaos. The child reached back, arms outstretched, eyes wide with longing and fear. You have to help us. They cried, their voice now a piercing wail blending with the sound of the bell. My heart ached at their plea, torn between the weight of my own panic and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make a difference. The energy in the room shifted, swirling like a storm. I took a step closer to the bell, compelled by a force I couldn't explain. What if it can set you free? I shouted, half to myself, half to the whispers that echoed around as pinpricks of light began to flicker into existence from the bell. Stop. You don't know what will happen. The old man yelled desperately. But the decision surged within me, a stubborn resolve I couldn't shake. I couldn't go back to being a helpless observer. With a determined breath, I held the key above the bell and shouted, I choose to release you. The shadows shrieked, coiling tighter around me and blurring the lines of reality. I plunged the key into the heart of the bell, and an explosion of luminescence erupted around us. The ground quaked beneath me, and the walls trembled with a powerful force. Ring it! The child cried, and I knew, against all odds, I had to follow through now, had to trust the bell. I grasped the bell tightly, letting the light consume me. In that moment, the weight of the world fell away. I squeezed my eyes shut, ringing the bell with all my strength as the echoes thundered through the room, encompassing everything in a sacred resonance. The voices merged into a single cry, a surge of emotion layered with desperation, loss, and ultimately hope. As the sound peaked, the shadows stilled for a moment, the air thickening with tension. And then everything went quiet. Gradually, the light began to fade, revealing the room transformed. The twisted furniture returned to its original, albeit shabby state. The child's figure flickered, and then more children joined, their forms slowly solidifying. They looked up at me, uncertainty mixed with gratitude shining in their spectral eyes. Thank you, whispered the child, their voice now soft and clear, echoing through the silence. Their expression carried a weight that both comforted and unsettled me. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, I felt a pull from the bell, resonating like a heartbeat. Then everything shifted again. Light burst through the cracks in the walls, enveloping the entire space in warmth. I looked around, aware of the presence of the old man hovering near me, raising his hands in silent acknowledgement. You did it, he murmured in disbelief. But I wasn't so sure. What had I really set in motion? As the figures of the children began to glide away, I trembled and asked, will you be okay? The child looked back, face calm and serene. We were never lost, we were waiting. I couldn't grasp their words, confusion clouding my mind. I wanted answers, closure, something concrete to cling to. But the last echoes of their laughter ghosted around me, a bittersweet reminder that the truth often remained elusive. With a final pulse of warmth, the light enveloped the children until they faded away, leaving only the bell behind, silent on the table. The shadows hung back, still and waiting, but I felt lightness in my heart as the old man placed a hand on my shoulder. We should go, he said, his voice now full of a quieter understanding. There are more questions than answers here, and some things are better left undisturbed. I nodded, swallowing hard, taking one last look around. The remnants of stories were still etched in those walls, the echoes of a past unforgotten. I stepped outside, feeling the cool breeze wash over me, a promise and a warning woven together. As we walked away from the farm, the weight of many unknowns lay heavy in the air. I still think about it sometimes, the echoes of laughter and the tolling bell. I may never understand everything that happened, but I know this: I faced something extraordinary that night. And perhaps, like the children, I was waiting for my own answers, hoping one day to uncover the truths hidden in the fog. But for now, I just keep moving forward, leaving the past and its bell in the shadows of memory.